June 26, 1920, Boston streets were clogged with a frenzy of men clutching newspapers that shouted, "Burn 50% in 45 days." The promise came from a small, unassuming office on Beacon Street, where a charismatic Italian immigrant named Charles Ponzi claimed he could turn a modest investment into a fortune overnight. In a world still reeling from war, his audacious promise ignited a wildfire of greed, hope, and ultimately, ruin. Charles Ponzi was born in 1882 on the rugged island of Procida, off the coast of Naples. He grew up in poverty, a son of a fisherman, and learned early the sting of hunger and the lure of a quick windfall. In 1903 he fled Italy, chasing the American dream across the Atlantic. After a stint in the United States Army, a failed restaurant venture, and a stint as a shoe salesman, Ponzi landed in Boston, a city of bustling ports and endless opportunity. It was there, amidst the clamor of immigrants and the lingering scars of the First World War, that he stumbled upon the idea that would make his name synonymous with deception. The scheme was built on a simple premise. Post-war Europe was starved for American-made postage stamps, which were being sold at a discount in the United States. Ponzi claimed he could purchase these stamps cheaply, ship them abroad, and then sell them back to the U.S. Postal Service at face value, netting a 30% profit in a matter of weeks. The math, as Ponzi presented it, seemed irresistible. Invest $100 and in 45 days you'd receive $150. The promise of such rapid, risk-free returns resonated with a populace still haunted by rationing, unemployment, and the looming specter of the 1920s boom. Word spread like wildfire. By March 1920, Ponzi's Securities Exchange Company was processing an astonishing $250,000 a day in investments. People queued outside his office, cash in hand, desperate to be part of the miracle. Investors were paid their promised returns on time at first. The secret was simple. Ponzi used the money of new investors to pay the earlier ones, creating an illusion of profitability. There were no actual stamp transactions of any significance. The whole operation was a house of cards built on the relentless influx of fresh capital. As the cash flow surged, so did the scrutiny. A diligent reporter from the Boston Post, James H. McGrath, began to question the mechanics of Ponzi's operation. He uncovered that Ponzi's stamp inventory was a fraction of the volumes he claimed, and that the profits were merely a redistribution of incoming funds. On August 5, 1920, McGrath's exposé ran, painting Ponzi not as a visionary entrepreneur, but as a fraudster exploiting the hopes of a nation. The fallout was swift. Within days, the United States Post Office Department launched an investigation, and the state's Attorney General ordered a freeze on Ponzi's assets. On August 11, 1920, a grand jury convened, and the evidence was overwhelming. Ledgers that showed no real trade, bank statements that mirrored the inflow-outflow pattern of a classic pyramid, and testimonies from investors who had never received a single stamp. Ponzi was arrested on August 12, charged with multiple counts of fraud, larceny, and violations of the federal money laundering statutes, though the latter would not be formalized until decades later. The trial, held at the Boston City Hall, captured the nation's attention. The courtroom was packed with former investors, journalists, and curious onlookers. Prosecutor Thomas J. O'Leary painted a vivid picture of deception, noting how Ponzi had taken in over $15 million, equivalent to more than $200 million today, while distributing only a fraction back to his victims. Ponzi's defense tried to portray him as a misunderstood genius, a victim of overzealous regulators, and even an unwitting participant in a larger financial conspiracy. He claimed he had been the man of the people, providing hope in a bleak era. The jury, however, was unmoved. On September 21, 1920, after a brisk 3-day deliberation, they returned a verdict of guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in federal prison, a $10,000 fine, a modest sum compared to the scale of his fraud, and ordered the restitution of whatever assets could be recovered. The immediate aftermath was chaotic. As Ponzi's assets were liquidated, the government managed to return a mere $2.6 million to his investors, a fraction of the $15 million he had amassed. The scandal rippled through the financial world, prompting an overhaul of securities regulation and the eventual passage of the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. Investors, once dazzled by the promise of instant wealth, became more cautious, demanding greater transparency and accountability from financial intermediaries. Charles Ponzi's personal life fell apart in tandem with his empire. After serving his sentence, he was deported to Italy in 1934, where he spent the remainder of his days as a broken man, working odd jobs and living in near obscurity. He died in 1949, a shadow of the man who had once commanded the attention of a nation. Yet his legacy endured. The term Ponzi scheme entered the lexicon, serving as a cautionary label for any fraud that relies on the continuous recruitment of new investors to pay earlier ones. In the decades that followed, variations of Ponzi's method resurfaced. Bernie Madoff's $65 billion fraud, the Nigerian prince, email scams, and countless cryptocurrency cons. Each iteration echoes the same timeless lesson. When a promise sounds too good to be true, it almost always is. Subscribe to The Verdict for more stories like this.